What do you like? Tell me what you like.
I love the idea of nourishing both our body and our soul.
Welcome to the Nourishing You Podcast presented by the National Association of Nutrition Professionals, NANP. We invite you to join Kristen Burkett and Diana Wally as they host experts from the holistic wellness space who will share practical tips and information to enhance your health and vitality. Kristen and Diana are master nutrition therapists and board certified in holistic nutrition with private practices that support their clients as they strive to reach their full potential. If you enjoy today's show, please help us out by commenting below, liking this video, and subscribing to the channel to help us spread the word.
You have to move your body. That's my message. That's my passion.
Thank you for your interest in our content. This meeting and all materials presented today, including slides, audio, video, and chat content, are protected intellectual property of the hosting organization, the National Association of Nutrition Professionals, NANP. Recording, screen capturing, rebroadcasting, transcribing, or otherwise using any portion of this presentation is strictly prohibited without prior written permission. This includes the use of third-party platforms such as Webinar TV, as well as AI chatbots, AI note-taking tools, or any other artificial intelligence technologies. Unauthorized use of this content may result in immediate removal from the meeting and may subject the offending party to legal action. By remaining in this session, you acknowledge and agree to these terms. Thank you for your cooperation, and we appreciate your respect for our work. This episode of the Nourishing You podcast is brought to you by Whole Practice.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Nourishing You podcast. We're looking forward to our conversation with EC Synkowski today and learning more about how stress might play a role in our weight management and body composition goals. EC Synkowski runs Optimize Me Nutrition, a company dedicated to making nutrition easy. Thousands have used her 800-gram challenge, a diet free of restrictive rules, to eat healthily and have reported weight loss, increased energy, improved performance, and more. She has extensive education in the life sciences with a BS in biochemical engineering, her first Master of Science in Environmental Sciences with a focus on genetics, a second MS in Nutrition and Functional Medicine, is a certified nutrition specialist, and a licensed dietitian nutritionist. EC also holds the Certified CrossFit Level 4 Coach credential and has a top 1% podcast called The Consistency Project. Thanks for being with us today, EC.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on.
You know, as we were talking about before we started recording, you have such a range of science and nutrition and training education. So tell us how you became interested in these different areas and landed where you are today.
I think it was a little bit more by happenstance, or at least, I don't know, some sort of combination of luck and so forth. I have sort of put the picture together as we've continued on here, and I do think a lot of the similarities between even my degrees to then working in environmental consulting to now nutrition is I really like to make the complex simple for people. And I think with nutrition, we have that in spades, especially with all of the online digital media. It's really great to help people, give them a very simple plan that they can follow through. So I think there's some themes throughout about, science and all of that stuff, but ultimately across them, it's just kind of how can I take a really big topic and make it simple for people. And so that's how I would summarize it instead of kind of going a little bit more specific career choice by career choice.
So interesting. I think I could be a perpetual student. So I resonate with your training. I could just keep going.
Totally.
All right. Well, so today we're going to tackle a topic that affects almost everyone, and that's stress. We all know stress can impact how we feel. And while it may not be causative on its own, it can also play a role in weight gain, challenges with weight loss, maybe how successful we are in reaching our body composition goals. So maybe to start unpacking this, can you break down for us what stress is and how our body might react to stress?
Yeah, I mean, I think stress is always interpreted in the negative. It's, I'm stressed out and therefore, it's affecting my weight and body composition, as you mentioned. But stress is just really stimulus that causes an adaptation. And sometimes that can be quite favorable. I'm sure some of us can all remember some sort of time at work when maybe we were really stressed, but we also got a big project done. Or even stress from exercise causes a lot of favorable adaptations. So you really want to think about it as an external stimuli that's driving an adaptation, and that can be both favorable and it can also be not favorable. And so I like to remind people of that because I do see some stuff, especially in the social media online sphere as well, that even encourages people, away from exercise or certain types of exercise because of that fear of stress, which we can get into. But so, yeah, it's understanding kind of the stimulus that's driving an adaptation. And I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of stress and weight and body composition. It's really not the stress in and of itself that's the problem. It's how we respond to that stress, and especially in a modern food environment. And this is what's so interesting about the research is that we find that when people are stressed, it's a really kind of split decision, if you will, about how people end up coping with that stress. And that about half of people end up turning to food and the other half of people do not. So it's not a 1-for-1. And the more you have kind of the processed calorically dense foods around you, the more likely you're going to turn to food for your coping mechanism.
So why is that? Is there a physiological reason between why some people, as you said, feel stress and they just eat all the hyperpalatable processed foods? Or so me, if I feel really stressed or upset, I get a tummy ache. I don't, what is there something behind that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, of course, there's more work to be done, totally delineating the pathways. As far as I understand, a lot of it has to do with that dopamine response, kind of that reward response from that calorically dense processed food. Stephan Guyenet, who wrote The Hungry Brain, I think is so excellent
Love
on
that
this
book.
topic. Yeah, so good. But anyway, he really describes dopamine as kind of like the learning neurochemical, which I really liked that in the sense of it kind of tells you to keep doing whatever you just did. And so that dopamine high is this sort of message to yourself to, okay, repeat what you did. And when we eat calorically dense foods from an evolutionary perspective, you want to remember that we would want to keep doing that because food was scarce. And so it's actually quite a natural response in our modern food environment to have that dopamine high and then to keep wanting that food from like a survival point of view. And so it seems to be that cortisol, which can go up when we're stressed, can even sensitize or make more sensitive that dopamine pathway and that dopamine response. And so the more you kind of keep doing that as your coping mechanism to stress, the more likely you're going to want it. Now, as you've described, you're not that type of person. And that's the other thing is some people learn that they don't want to eat. And so, it can go both ways. And typically the more catastrophic the stress is, the less likely the person is going to eat. Like when you think about something like a natural disaster or something truly horrific, very few people are going to say, oh, I want some chips. It's more of that kind of chronic mid-level stress, especially then in combination with having those foods present that really provide the opportunity for negative eating behaviors.
Yeah. I see what you're saying a lot with even just the learned behavior behind it. Because when I think about, so when Diana's saying, okay, I get stressed and my stomach gets funky and I don't want to eat, and I'm completely the opposite. I'm going to my cabinet to self-soothe. And I think back when my parents divorced when I was young, my mom and I would sit after she came home from a really stressful day, the job she had to go to all of a sudden, and we would sit down with a pint of Haagen-Dazs. And that was like our way to comfort each other. And that became like the mechanism. And so that was my learned behavior. And so I found as an adult, it's really hard to break that pattern, and recognize when I'm going for that kind of soothing or distraction or whatever versus, I'm truly hungry, that type of thing. So I see that learning. What about the difference between, seems like you're talking more of like an acute stress where something comes up and you have a direct reaction versus chronic stress or something that's more long-term. Does that matter at all? Or is there something different in the mechanism there?
I don't think too much in terms of the mechanism. I just think it could have longer and more far-reaching impacts on somebody's eating behavior, right? So then that's what's really interesting too. You mentioned kind of the self-soothing with the ice cream. There's shades of gray to all of this that, if somebody overeating ice cream sporadically on a Friday night really doesn't play out that much in terms of negative health consequences. Conversely, somebody who is chronically stressed because of their job or family or whatever it is, if they're self-soothing every single day because of that, then we could have stress eating that leads to weight gain. And so I find that also with some of my clients as well, is that they'll describe themselves as stress eaters, which that's an interesting problem in and of itself. But nevertheless, it's sort of thinking, kind of teasing out, is it really the stress eating that's the problem? Or is it these sporadics? Okay, I'm coping a little bit with some chocolate and it might be okay. Because not everybody who stress eats has a stress eating problem.
So what would stress eating look like? Because it seems like you're kind of, yeah, I'm like, do I do that? I do like chocolate. I also like ice cream. But yeah, so what would that sort of ongoing stress eating pattern look like?
To me, it would be somebody who is now gaining weight because of their stress eating, gaining unhealthy weight because of their stress eating, and potentially even leading into things like not sleeping well or not exercising or not going to family events or something that starts to get in the way of otherwise healthy living. That's to me when stress eating is a problem. Like somebody just coming home on a sporadic Friday and they're mad about their job or an email they just got from their boss and they have a chocolate bar. I don't really think we need to intervene there, right? It's more of the case where now we have this habit of behavior that is definitely impacting our health markers, our weight, and like I said, maybe some other aspects of your lifestyle that then, okay, this is a problem that you have to deal with.
Yeah, when I think back to a previous discussion we had in this series on weight management, we were talking about how calories do matter in the weight loss equation. And so when you've got someone that is chronically stress eating, those calories start to add up. And so it might not be like a dramatic weight gain, but in somebody who's trying to lose weight, that extra 50, 100, 200 calories a day really adds up and can work against the goals that somebody might have.
Totally. There's this odd messaging out there in social media land that says, okay, just stress in and of itself drives weight gain. We actually have to have the eating as the response to that. And that doesn't mean it's an easy problem to fix. Like I am sympathetic to people who are chronically stressed. It's just that I like to point out that we have to have the eating because that gives us the opportunity to get in between having the stress and then having the response of eating. Because that's the only way to kind of fix this, if you will. It's like, how do we stop and change the behavior? It's not just I'm stressed and so I'm gaining weight. It's I'm stressed, I turn to food and now I'm gaining weight. And so now we have to kind of break up that coping mechanism.
Yeah. So another thing that I've seen in social media a lot is that there may be this link between cortisol and weight gain. And so can you just for our audience make sure we understand the link between stress, cortisol, and what's myth and what's fact that we haven't covered already in there?
Yeah. Yes, I've seen that one in social media land. Yeah, I think it's better to describe cortisol as a mobilization hormone than it is a stress hormone. Now, it certainly is a stress hormone, but the reason that it's a mobilization hormone is because when you're stressed, such as maybe you have to run away from a tiger, as we did many years ago, it would mobilize energy in our body to be able to have that on hand to sprint, run, etc. And so I think that's kind of better way to think about it than just sort of this stress hormone. And what people will describe in social media land is that stress, again, in and of itself, this cortisol response is going to be responsible for weight gain. It's not. They'll also talk about things like necessarily having weight at the belly. It's not. You still have to have that excess caloric intake relative to your needs to actually put on the fat. And I think just pointing out to literature that looks at people doing HIIT training, high intensity interval training, and the fact that you see improved body composition. The other thing that I like to point out, I'm from the CrossFit community. I spent a lot of time working for CrossFit at headquarters as well. Very high intense exercise protocol. The top athletes there are very lean. Top Olympic athletes are very lean. If high intensity drove fat gain in and of itself, we would have a problem with our top athletic population. And so not just in those populations, but also just in PubMed research looking at, let's say, postmenopausal women doing high intensity interval training, we find that they can improve their body composition because stress, again, can be a positive outside stimuli that we adapt to. And so it's more that it's mobilizing energy, and we instead have to look at the caloric intake relative to your needs to really determine why we're gaining fat, not just that we had stress at some point during the day.
That's a good explanation. I've never heard somebody say it that way. That's very helpful. Okay, great. So now that we understand a little more about how stress can influence weight gain and metabolism, let's go deeper into how stress can actually shape our behaviors, eating and other behaviors, and interfere with body composition goals.
Yeah. So definitely this is where reaching for those processed foods, they're so easy to overeat and they're delicious. I mean, there's very few people who actually don't like the taste of them. Of course, I love my fruits and veggies. Of course, I love my whole foods. But guess what? I also think nacho chips taste good too. So those processed foods are just so easy to overeat. And I find this a lot with my clients is they have this disconnect between understanding the feeling of fullness and relative to the caloric intake that they just took in. And so fruits and vegetables, for example, have a very low caloric intake, and you can eat them and feel quite full, but you've eaten very few calories. Conversely, you could eat chocolate truffles or some tortilla chips and you don't feel like you ate that much, but you might have eaten 2, 3, 4 times the amount of calories. And so this is the problem with stress, is that we're reaching for those calorically dense items because A, we like the taste, B, from an evolutionary perspective, we love getting those calories in so that we know we're safe and we're not starving. And so you're just able to put down several hundred calories without necessarily feeling that full. And I know that sounds like an exaggeration, but 1,000 calories goes by in like a split second. It's so easy to eat 1,000 calories. And so this is how it can ultimately lead to weight gain, especially over time.
What is it about the ultra processed foods that drives those cravings?
A lot. Oh man, Ashley Gearhart's exceptional on this topic. If you haven't interviewed her, she's working on, I think, food addiction relative to the DSM manual. And so you're probably going to want an expert like that as opposed to me. But nevertheless, there's a lot of different influences on what our drives to eat are. Some of them is that dopamine high that we know that we felt good before. But there's so many other influences on why we eat. Like in our environment's a super powerful one. Again, Stephan Guyenet talks about that a lot. And it's one of the things that I recommend with my clients is if you have the ice cream in the freezer, you're going to be thinking a lot more about it. But then also like time of day, even if you're used to always eating or you're used to having snacks when your significant other comes home, that's going to be kind of a trigger for you. It's kind of like the Pavlov response there. Smells, if somebody bakes cookies, you're going to want to taste the cookies. So there's a lot of other things that come into play to that drive to eat or want to eat.
Yeah. And then I also just think about the craving aspect of the chemicals that are in processed food, just all those fun little things that get put in there that make us want them more because it hits the different centers in the brain. Yeah.
Yes. And Dr. Gearhart's great on that, especially relative to just the additives. Not that any additive in and of itself is a problem, but the way that the smells or the texture, the mouthfeel, the way the food just melts in your mouth, that's all like designed that way. Yes. And so it's so easy, like I mentioned, to overeat the calories.
Yeah, broccoli. I love broccoli, but it does hit a little bit different than a chocolate truffle.
Correct. Yeah.
It's a little different.
Yeah, and I love that when I was talking about some of the food qualities with her, that melt in the mouth. I mean, when you think about fruits or vegetables, you would never describe them as melt in your mouth. Again, I love berries, I love broccoli, I love sweet potatoes, but never would I ever describe them as melt in your mouth. Conversely, when people talk about chocolate, it's like, I just can't stop and I ate so much. And it's partially because it's this like almost pre-digested food that just, again, you can consume so many more calories than intended.
Yeah. And just for the listener, you've mentioned dopamine several times. Would you describe it as, so you're saying it's a learned response. So we remember that feeling before. Does that feel calming? Like what would someone get from that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say more kind of relaxed or happy or satisfied. It's definitely more of like a motivational, again, it's that feeling of I want to do that again. So, I guess that people can feel that in different ways, but I would definitely kind of calm, enjoyment type of overall feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Almost like, I don't know, kind of the word accomplished comes to my mind too, because you get the same kind of hit from social media, right? Like somebody likes something that you post and it's like,
oh, interesting.
Yeah, I did that. I accomplished that. Like same kind of thing when you eat those foods and you get that dopamine response. Oh, yeah, that was good. I'm going to do that again.
Exactly.
So the calories directly from eating, from stress, can make an impact on all of these goals. What are some other ways that stress might interfere with reaching our goals that may, like the secondary way, affect weight management?
Yeah, of course, it depends on the severity. Sleep is a big one. As much as I love nutrition, I think there's some hacks like exercise and sleep that actually are kind of places to start. So if somebody's stressed out and they're not able to sleep well, this really can affect their eating behavior. what we find is that when you've had a poor night's sleep, haven't had enough sleep, the next day, your appetite is increased, even if you've eaten enough calories, which is insane. Again, even if you've eaten enough calories, but you're on too little sleep, you're going to be more hungry. So, of course, then you might be reaching for more of the snacks, eating more calories than you need because you're tired. I also know there's been times when I'm stressed because of the work to do, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, I don't have time for my workout today. Let me just work through this hour. When, of course, we all know that it's much better to go get the workout done. You're actually going to be more productive. But of course, if you're, quote, too stressed for exercise, that can cut into your overall caloric balance and therefore kind of be eating away at your goals. So those are the big ones that come into mind. I mean, I guess, again, that drive for these ultra processed foods, you're going to start choosing those over your fruits and vegetables. So then we have that decrease of nutrient quality, decrease of fiber. But those are kind of the big ones that I think about: sleep and exercise, how it might be impacting those.
And it's interesting because I talk about this a lot with my clients, is that the lack of a poor night's sleep and how it can affect you the next day and increase the hunger. And when I can't remember anybody that I've brought that up to that hasn't said, "Oh my goodness, yes, I've experienced that." It's so true
Mhm.
of how and it's not only increases your eating, but the craving for like the at least for me, like the more carbohydrate type of foods, but that is so real. And I believe I've seen research even with, I think, they've restricted study participants' sleep for 5 nights. They've short slept them and then they're pre-diabetic at the end of
Mhm.
that. It affects your blood sugar. Like it's crazy what sleep deprivation can do to us.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes people, when they want to lose weight, the thought is, okay, I'm going to cut out the sugar, or I'm going to count calories and all of this stuff. And sometimes I'm thinking to myself, let's just start with sleep. Again, I'm from the nutritionist here, but I'm like, let's just start with sleep. Or one of the things I've said a lot on social media is I do believe exercise is the nutrition hack, because I think it helps kind of develop this belief that they can follow through on healthy behaviors. And I think it helps regulate appetite and it helps them sleep. So there's all these other things that sometimes people want to jump right into nutrition. And again, as much as I love it and think it's really powerful, I'm like, start with something else first.
Well, I think that for many people, the nutrition is easier
Mhm.
than the sleep and the stress, which is
Sure.
why they wanna go there, right? Like starting an exercise program or being consistent with exercise or trying to manage, acute stress or chronic stress, like that's really hard.
Mm.
So I don't know, because I agree with you. I think those are as important as, even though I'm a nutritionist, as important, but those are hard.
Yeah, of course, it depends on the stress. Let's
Yeah.
say mom of four, something like that, working mom of four. I mean, there's a level of stress that you're not going to be able to take away. I do think, I became a licensed nutritionist. I went down all of the rabbit holes on social media. I didn't eat fruit for a while because I thought it was too much sugar, a super restrictive diet, all the stuff that a lot of people fall to. And so I do think there is a good amount of food anxiety stress that is just perpetuated by some really bad information online. So there are some times when I think we can, I don't say more easy, but more easy than, let's say, the working mom of four, take away some of the stress just by giving kind of some good information and good simple guidance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know I wrote down what you said about your really a big motivation for you is to make the complex simple.
Mhm, mhm.
And yes, oh my gosh. And sometimes even just giving people accurate information, simple information, you can see their stress go down.
Mhm.
You can just see them relax a little.
I was just thinking, with your size, like when somebody sits down with you and says, "I want you to go to bed earlier," or "I want you to get some sleep," like that's like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Might be not what they're expecting from the nutritionist, right?
Whole Practice is a full practice management platform built for wellness professionals. It features the Wellness Questionnaire with beautiful, informative, client friendly reports that make it easy to communicate with your clients or patients. With Whole Practice, you can gain new insights, streamline your workflow, and achieve better results.
Yeah, I was just going to say that one of the first things I work on with my clients is something that I've called the 800-gram challenge that you mentioned in the intro. And it really just has people focus on adding fruits and veggies to their diet. And, a lot of what people first say about it, the early wins, are how mentally freeing it is after coming out of so many restrictive diets and so many silly rules and afraid to eat fruit and potatoes have too many carbs, or what they think according to social media. And then I tell them to have all of it and have as much as you want as it. And they're just like, oh, this is so nice. This is so mentally freeing. And so it's a little bit of taking that stress around eating away. And I do think that you can help clients with that with some good information for sure.
And then they might sleep better, right? You're taking that
Yes.
Yes. So it's like all connected.
Well, now that we're kind of diving into this area from that practical standpoint, if stress is getting in the way of eating habits, sleep, exercise, let's talk about some things that we might be able to do to regain control. And you just kind of started to mention that, but what are some of the top things that come to your mind?
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record on the food environment. I do think it's pretty much the best control point you have. Obviously, we can't control the food environment in terms of the drugstores and the gas stations and the movie theaters and all of the other stuff, but you can control your own food environment. And so one of the taglines that I've said on social media is, if you binge it, don't buy it. Now, some people don't like that because they think I'm vilifying food. I'm not. There's just going to be different trigger foods for different people. And especially if you're trying to lose weight, do not buy the food that you're going to eat all in one sitting. And I always joke around that there's a reason I don't buy the dark chocolate covered espresso beans from Trader Joe's. There's no need for me to eat the container in one sitting. So I don't
I have those in my pantry. I can't eat them because I'm like super sensitive to caffeine, but my husband and my one daughter are like, look. Yeah. So yeah. That's so funny that you brought those up. Yeah.
So like, this is the thing. I think there's a lot in nutrition where people know themselves better than any nutritionist or coach ever will. And so you kind of have to start calling yourself out. It's like, okay, I know I'm going to eat all of the Doritos, or I know I'm going to overeat the Ben & Jerry's ice cream, whatever it is. Okay, we can't buy that for our house. That doesn't mean we can never have it. That doesn't mean it's a terrible food, but we have to start giving ourselves space, that time, so that when we're stressed, we have time to make a different decision. And if that thing's in your pantry or that thing's in your freezer, you don't have a lot of time. Now, sometimes my clients will say, well, I can still jump in the car and go to the gas station or whatever. Yes, understood. And it still takes longer than if it's in your pantry, right? So you still get a little bit more time getting in the car, getting the coat on. If it's winter, do I really want to go do this, right? So all of that is trying to give yourself a better chance to make a different decision.
You might be in your pajamas.
Yeah. So that's a big one, is the environment. And I do also encourage people to find foods they like that, I know some nutritionists are going to roll their eyes at this one, but I do think that you can stress eat a little bit, in the sense of, okay, have it. It's really not a big deal. I'm okay with people having Diet Coke. I don't think it's a problem. You like a sweet taste, go for it. Have a whole bowl of frozen de-thawed mango. I always have a bag of mango in my freezer. You put some tahini on it. I think it tastes like candy. Have the whole bag. It's only like 200 calories. It's not a big deal. Maybe it's flavored rice cakes. Maybe there's some other snack that you like, but you just don't have that same binge-like quality to. Have those in your house, but don't, again, have the foods that you would kind of consider your trigger foods. And it really is different for different people about kind of what foods are really make them kind of overeat, like that loss of control feeling. So that's a big one. That's a really big one. And then the other thing I have people do is I really have them focus on this fruit and veggie thing. I think there's a lot of diets that have people focus on the restrictions and what they can't have. And I think that ultimately makes them more attractive. And so 90% of Americans aren't eating enough fruits and vegetables. So I say, have at it. Have any fruits and vegetables you like. You don't like broccoli? Great. Do more strawberries. You don't like strawberries? Great. Do more apples, whatever it is. And it also includes things like potatoes and beans and corn and avocado. And so, yeah, they're trying to hit this 800 grams a day, and it kind of shifts the focus away from a restrictive mindset to more getting this calorically undense foods in their diet. And so that's kind of my two main approaches to kind of stress eating and changing the behavior.
I had a question around food environment because I am with you. In fact, I will often recommend make your decision at the store, just like you said, just a different way of what you said.
Yeah.
And I don't always do that perfectly, but do you have any tips for somebody who maybe can't, I don't want to say can't control, because I guess you always have some control, but let's say you're a mom or a dad and you have several children at home. So you have some kid food that you might really like. Do you have any tips for that? Other than I've heard Steph and Guillain talk about, well, keep it out of sight at least. So don't keep the cookies on the counter. Like maybe they're up in the cupboard or in the pantry so that you're not seeing them, but you have a bowl of like apples on the counter or pears or whatever. Do you have any tips for somebody who maybe can't control their environment that as much as they'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple opinions on that. I also like to preface this with I'm not a mom, so I know it's easier said than done in the parenting sphere, and I certainly understand there's a wide range of successful parenting techniques. Nevertheless, I think there's a couple things there. One, I do think there are going to be some snacks that the kids or the significant other like that maybe you don't like as much. And so those you can kind of lean into a little bit more. Like maybe you're not going to overeat, I don't know, the chocolate Cocoa Puffs, but they like a bowl of cereal in the morning. Okay, then that's something that you're going to want to have more in the house if you want to do the snack thing versus necessarily buy the thing that you love. And I think there's a lot of stuff like that because, again, we all have these different foods that are more and less appealing to us. But I would also say, I'm sure you all are similar because you deal with clients, is a lot of our eating habits are set up over years and years. And you even mentioned eating ice cream with your mom, right? As like as a coping mechanism. And so I just encourage parents, like, look, I see the clients in their 40s and their 50s and they want to lose 20 plus 50 pounds. It's not easy. It's really not easy. And so you want to think about it as like, what habits can we set up now? And I'm not vilifying sweets. I think they're delicious. I think you should celebrate holidays. I think you can enjoy snacks, all of that stuff. But I do think there's a little bit of like, oh, their kids have whatever. And instead it's like, no, let's start setting them up for success now and trying to have some sort of mostly whole unprocessed food diet when they leave your house. And I think like hats off, job well done as a parent from the nutrition front.
Yes, 100%. Yes, what she said.
Good.
Agreed. Going back to, so there's strategies we can do like in our home, in our cabinets, in our pantries, refrigerators. What about going back to the concept of stress response? Like how we let stress come into us that drives that desire to binge or snack or eat to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different techniques, and I think probably, again, somebody else is going to be the better expert on this one, but this is where you can do things like go for a walk or try to move around or drink water. Or I have multiple clients who have just tried different things, even say it out loud. And I feel stressed. And so I feel like I want to eat, but I don't want to eat because that's against my goals. Like kind of identifying it in the moment, trying to have something besides the kitchen, or maybe you would create a rule like I'm going to brush my teeth before I eat. Now, some people get mad about this type of stuff because they think it's, vilifying food. Again, we're not vilifying food. We're trying to change our behavior and a coping mechanism around food. So anything that you can do that gives you that extra minute to be like, you know what, I don't actually want that. Maybe it's, I'm going to make sure I eat 2 apples before I eat the Dorito chips or something like that. And then by the time you're done with the 2 apples, you're like, you know what? I was just upset. I don't actually need the Doritos. Or you eat the proper size of Doritos or something like that. So it's anything that you can do to create more time to start regulating with your own mind of what the trigger is, why you're upset, I'm upset, and if there's another way to handle it.
Yeah. I think just beginning with reframing whatever's happening, before you even try to make the decision about eating. Am I really stressed? Am I busy? Am I procrastinating? Am I just trying to really identify the emotion so that it's not, I don't know. I just feel like in our society, we're in love with the word stress. And that just has this huge connotation around what it allows us to do or think, feel, be, react, whatever. And so I've been trying to help my clients a lot with choose a different word. I feel so just anything but stressed. Like maybe it's that, but there's probably something else connected to it. And if you can deal with that, maybe you offset this whole emotional roller coaster that gets set off with the word stress.
Yeah, I mean, I know that this topic was stress, but I do think that's a really great point. I think people eat for lots of different reasons, to include procrastination. I don't feel like answering this email. Well, let me go see what's in the kitchen or something like that. So that ability to stop yourself and just sort of think, why am I eating? If you start to answer that question, I think can be really powerful, and try to reframe it away from just like, I'm stressed, I need to eat.
Yeah, I work at home and I may or may not find myself in my pantry sometimes. And then I come to and I'm like, what am I doing in here?
Yeah.
Not even so just thinking about it, that's crazy. And I think it's true that it can be hard to eliminate stress completely where there's this life, right? And you mentioned before, I think that it's not it's maybe, not so much the stress, but how we respond to it, and we can kind of build good habits and all of that. So I'm wondering if somebody feels really stuck, is there like something like a small step they can take, right after they watch this to kind of help break that cycle and make them maybe be more aware of what's happening?
Mm. Yeah, I think some of the things that we mentioned, like honestly, I don't actually talk a ton with my clients about stress just in and of itself because I just totally reframe it to let's eat some fruits and vegetables. Now,
Okay.
in that process, they often are like, oh, this is actually really freeing and I'm less stressed and I feel better and I'm sleeping better and all of that stuff.
Okay.
So, because I just try to get them towards a food action that I think is productive. And so many people need more fruits and vegetables. So I steer a lot of people there. And so I would just encourage even the listeners, the small step after this is like, just add a piece of fruit every day to your diet. And I know that sounds so simple, but that's how you start building some really big wins and some big changes over time. I think that question that we just sort of framed, like, why am I eating, is super powerful. And it might be because I'm hungry and it might be because I want it. And those can be great answers, but often just giving yourself the time to pause, I think are two really simple steps that I would probably just leave it at that. Like add some fruit to your diet tomorrow and ask yourself, why am I eating? And I think it can get you pretty far.
Yeah, and the adding, I love that because most people, you guys have probably had the same experience where, one of the first things they say when you meet a new client is, well, I'm not going to give up coffee and don't take my blah, 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 and don't take my, but if you can give them something, so guess what? You get to have, an apple if that happens to be in season right now, but whatever that might be, or more vegetables, or add something there, it blows their mind. It's like, oh, this is already amazing. And, not only do you get to add something, but then you're adding so many vitamins and minerals in the fruits and that fiber that's so good for your tummy and also is filling. There's so many benefits to it. So I love that. I think that's a great strategy.
Yeah, I don't really, I mean, it's going to sound like I treat every client the same and I don't. People have different preferences, people have different targets and all of that stuff. I get it. But there's so much stuff with dieting, just like you're saying that they're not going to give up X, Y, and Z. I don't talk about any of that. Of course you're not. Of course you're not. We're going to eat some fruits and vegetables. You're going to pick them. You're going to pick the ones that you like. You can include potatoes. You can have olives. You want more fruit? Do it. Let's just go. And that's just my style a little bit too. As a coach, I'm very into kind of the action, like let's get moving towards the goal that you want. But I do find that, especially because so many people have been through all these crazy restrictive diets, that it just kind of de-emphasizes all of that and gets us moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, I was also just thinking about something you said earlier in this podcast about, stress can be a positive thing for the body. We're so used to thinking about it as negative in every context. And maybe if we see that we're stressed, maybe we think about how that might help us, like build resiliency, right? Like that's part of what stress does for us, is helps us build resiliency, and that allows us to make better choices. So,
Love it. Yes. I think that's one of the things that I hope people take away either from my podcast or social media. The body is not that sensitive. We are incredibly resilient. I mean, we did not get to 2025 as a species because, we've gotten too many emails. Like, the body can do some incredible things. And so we can be stressed and we respond to stress. And some of the greatest feats that have been done are because people were stressed to the max. So I think also, just like you said, reframing it a little bit. It just might be, I'm busy. I have a lot of responsibilities, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're truly stressed, that you can't do it, or that it's too much and too overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. You've talked about that before, Kristen, and I love that of finding a different word. I have one more question kind of around this. Do you have an opinion on journaling? So keeping a food diary, journaling to try to maybe bring awareness to what might be happening around stress eating and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think the food journaling can be great. I definitely take my clients through a progression of tracking. And so they will track their calories at some point, and oftentimes they can start to identify the patterns that way. It's like, okay, why was Friday always really high in calories? And it's like, okay, that's the day that I'm stressed after a work week or something like that. But I do think that journaling can really help. I also love the opinion. I think people intuitively know themselves really well. They know themselves backwards and forwards. They know their food habits better than I ever will, no matter how many sessions I work with them. I think they could tell you on day one, when and why they stress eat. Now, I think journaling can help them deal with those emotions and process those emotions and maybe start to handle it in a different way. But I think that they know. I think that they know intuitively when and why they're doing it, but they just haven't figured out a way to regulate their emotions. And so journaling can be phenomenal for that.
Yeah, so I guess maybe we just kind of have to be honest with ourselves sometimes, right? Be willing to look in the mirror.
Totally. Totally. I eat chocolate because it makes me feel better when I'm tired or whatever it is, right? I mean, it's like, okay, welcome to the club. That means you're human. Now we have to figure out a strategy that allows you to have chocolate to a dose that's not at odds with your goals. Yeah.
Right. Like my dose. Yeah, exactly. That's not going to be problematic. Anything else? So we want to ask you a fun question here. Anything else that you wanted to touch on that we haven't asked you that you found to be really helpful for your clients, or that you get a lot of feedback on social media, a positive feedback,
Yeah, I definitely push back a lot on the stress in of itself causes weight gain. And again, I've exercised consistently all of my life, athletic growing up, also worked for CrossFit again for a period of years. I really dislike people on social media scaring, I'm going to say it, predominantly women away from certain types of exercise. I mean, we've got 77% of Americans are not meeting the CDC exercise guidelines. And we have people getting on social media telling them that women should not be doing high intensity training or whatever training that they want to say is detrimental. And I'm disgusted by that. I really get mad and I'm just trying to smile through it and keep a positive face about it. But I really try to push back on that because all exercise is better than none. And high intensity training can be some of the best forms of exercise, especially if the person wants to do it and will be consistent with it. You can be healthy doing other forms of exercise, but that's something that I am really vocal about. And I really think it'll also help your stress levels and get some better sleep. So it can have a really nice positive feedback loop.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I find that I do not by choice, but meeting especially a new client, the first half an hour is debunking. They're like, okay, well, I saw this on TikTok, and then I saw this, and is this okay? And this okay? And my friend told me this, and I had this darling older woman the other day say, I forget what crazy myth she was asking me about, and I said, where did you hear that? And she goes, oh, from my friend who's a doctor, not a medical doctor. I was like, okay. Anyway, it's just crazy what's out there. And I feel like it's not only pushed to the Kristen and I have daughters, like to our daughters on TikTok and whatever, but, all ages, but also menopausal women offended at some of the things that I see out there that are so disingenuous, so wrong, so not helpful.
Correct. I think that population is ripe for fear mongering. They're going through a big change. They're feeling very different. Their symptoms are very real.
They are real.
No, I know that it is. It's very real, but then they're handed these solutions that are not real on the viral social media posts, and it's disgusting. So, but I encourage, especially that population, that weightlifting, resistance training, high intensity training, all forms of exercise are great, but do not fall into the trap that they're going to increase your cortisol and it's going to increase your belly fat, which is the whole concern, especially with menopause and body composition.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So now we want to find out. So give us you're so busy, successful, all of that, 5,000 million master's degrees and everything. I'm feeling a little inadequate. So tell us like a day in the life. What do you do to stay so vibrant, so healthy, so on?
Yeah, well, I do follow the nutrition program I recommend. So I average at least 800 grams of fruits and vegetables. I have about 0.7 grams per pound of protein. So it's about 120 grams because I am 6 feet tall. And then I fill out my calories with the foods that I like. So I do have chocolate most days. I exercise at least 5 days a week to include resistance training or CrossFit style training. My dog gets a lot of steps. He's sitting next to me here on the call, and then a lot of work. That's about it. It's quite a boring day. It's a lot of work, exercise, and healthy food.
But work that you enjoy, right? Does that make a difference?
This is true. Yeah, no, it is. It is. It's great connecting with clients. I teach different cohorts, so I love bringing people through that. I love empowering my clients that they don't really need a nutrition coach. I mean, it might not be the best business model, but I don't actually want long-term clients as much as I love them because I want them to be able to kind of navigate the space on their own. Yeah.
That's
great.
Beautiful. I love that.
It's been a pleasure to talk with you today. I think our audience is really going to take a whole different attitude about stress And
Embrace it.
embrace it, use it for good, and be able to let go of it as an excuse. You know?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, that's really well said, Kristen. That was a goosebumper because I feel like this was, very uplifting. I don't know.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Very good.
Well, yeah, and I want people to know that, especially because you brought up the menopause group. So, there's so much craziness online directed at them, but it's like, no, you can change this. You can change your body composition. You can change your weight. This is very doable. It's very within reach, but you got to focus on the basics that matter and not all this silliness that we see on TikTok.
Yeah. We agree. So we were talking before we started recording and you were mentioning a practitioner course so just tell us your offerings, where people can find you, because I know they'll want to reach out, connect with you.
Yes, thank you. OptimizeMeNutrition.com. And then I have the podcast, The Consistency Project, also on Instagram and Facebook, Optimize Me Nutrition. But yeah, I guess my signature product is kind of a masterclass that I take people through with 10-week cohorts. And there is a division that is for coaches. And so I'll have people who come through who are healthcare practitioners. I've had MDs, NPs, I've had RNs, people that are looking to add on kind of nutrition to their current offerings or maybe switch over to nutrition. And so, we go through the process that I use to teach my clients, which is just what I said. We add fruits and veggies, we look at protein, we look at calories, but then we talk about the coaching challenges, plateaus, lack of adherence, lack of progress, that type of stuff. So all the information is at OptimizeMeNutrition.com.
Great. Well, thank you. So, we loved having you. This was fantastic. So we'd love to reconnect at some point. And just to the audience, if you find this episode helpful, which I know you will, please subscribe, share it with a friend, a neighbor, and leave us a review, because that obviously helps us meet or reach other people that are also on a health journey. So thank you all for listening. And until next time, be well.
To learn more about Whole Practice, visit wholepractice.com. Don't miss a beat. Find other episodes and subscribe to this podcast on YouTube or check us out on your favorite streaming app. Now available on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and more. You can also visit nanp.org for more information. Looking for a board-certified holistic nutrition professional to support you on your health journey? Go to nanp.org to get started today. Membership in the NANP provides you with a competitive advantage. Whether you're a current practitioner or a student, we want you to become an active, informed leader of the holistic nutrition community and join our association today. When you're ready to go a step further, you can boost your credibility by becoming board certified in holistic nutrition. Visit nanp.org today to apply. The information on the NANP podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical or legal advice. The NANP is not liable or responsible for any harm, damage, or illness arising from the use of the information contained herein. By listening to the information on this podcast, you agree to defend, indemnify, and hold harmless the NANP and all agents. Copyright NANP, all rights reserved. Until next time, stay nourished.